Hello, everyone, and welcome to
God Culture.
Game of Thrones is good. I can't believe you've got me to do this. As you might have guessed, I am not, unfortunately, Adam Cleary, because he's the busiest man alive. But as always, I am joined by the great men Adam Wilbourn and James Hunt for episode 4, season 4 of the Game of Thrones Roundup recap. Where did we leave off last time, guys? Season 3, nothing much happens in season 3, if I recall. Especially not towards the end.
It's quite quiet one, isn't it?
It is, I think, yeah. A little thing, like a little wedding and not much else.
Yeah, that Tyrion and Sansa wedding.
Yeah, wines flow. Because obviously, season 3 ended with the Red Wedding and a whole host of other stuff. Jon Snow is on his way back after being shot. And so, guys, this holds a special place in my heart because season 4 was the time when I jumped onto the show properly. I'd caught up with it before, but this was the first time I watched it live. And it wastes absolutely no time in just getting straight to it. In my opinion, it's the best season overall. Is that a controversial thing to say?
I don't think so. I think it's a very eventful season. Like there's you forget how much they cram into this as well. Like my notes here, just at the top, just says Joffrey dies. It's the one thing I really cannot wait to get onto because I really like rewatching it. I've been rewatching it all recently, and any time Joffrey has been Joffrey, I've out verbalized it. I've said, "Don't worry, he's going to die a really, really horrible death soon." And yeah, you get the reward here. But yeah, it's such an eventful one. And the fact that you not only get big deaths and shocks and what have you, but also a big battle as well involved. It sort of combines everything you want to see in a season of Game of Thrones in one season. Yeah,
for me, it's like a real, like a great transitionary period. Like so much happens in this show, and at the very end of it, for me, it's kind of a completely different show to what we got before. We saw threads of this in like Red Wedding at the end of season 3, but for me, this is like Game of Thrones in its prime, moving on to what would become this super huge like behemoth. James, what do you think?
Yeah, I totally agree with all of what both of you have said. I think it is the best season, especially the stuff in King's Landing. It's just moving. It's so well. It's so cohesive. It's so well written. Some brilliant acting. There's some, like I say, these huge shocks. Things you don't see coming. But then these great little character moments as well. Just everything is working in unison. It's wonderful.
It's arguably one of the most memed seasons as well. I remember watching it for the first time because I think I started watching season 5, season 6 sort of time. And then all the memes started to make sense. So what's her name? Ilaria? Am I pronouncing that right? Oberyn's other half. Yeah. Her scream. I'd seen that GIF being used everywhere. And now I was like, now it makes sense. And obviously, Joffrey's hideous post-death face, which had just been seen shared everywhere. And I was like, I wonder who that guy is. Poor guy. No, not poor guy. Good. I'm glad he's dead.
Well, now we've mentioned it a few times. We might as well start with the stuff in King's Landing, I guess, because, it is incredibly sort of like eventful. That death with Joffrey came in episode 2, of course. Like a huge surprise. Like I wasn't expecting that at all. Like, I mean, going back to it now, it's sort of like, I don't know. It's so sudden, and like even if I suppose if you read the books, you know exactly where it's going. But it's so ugly and nasty and brutal, and like you've been waiting for this character's death for so long, and yet when it comes, I don't know about you, Wilbourn, because you seem to triumph it. But I was a bit like, actually, maybe I shouldn't have got what I wished for.
You do feel a little bit guilty the first time you see it.
No, you don't.
Whoa, James.
Come on.
A little bit.
It's so satisfying.
I think as well. I think the thing is as well is had he just. Not that this ever would happen in Game of Thrones, had a nice wedding and then died. But it's the fact he has his wedding and he's still just a massive bellend throughout the whole thing. And he, especially to Tyrion, making him, his cupbearer. Oh, my cup's empty, fill it up. And then he goes to fill it up and he drops it on the floor. And you're like, and he's already done all that. He does all the obviously horrendous stuff, shooting people with crossbows and what have you. But then there's the stuff of when he takes the stool away. I know it's not this season, but when he did that to Tyrion at his wedding, and you're just like, "Oh, just die, And the way he dies as well, like the two biggest, most hated people, arguably in Game of Thrones, are him and Ramsay Bolton, and their deaths are horrific, both of them, but just so satisfying.
Yeah, exactly like what you said there. Like, obviously, he gets supplanted by Ramsay in this season as sort of like the big bad. But the thing that Ramsay doesn't have for me is exactly what you said there, Wilbourn, is how much of a bellend he is. Like, Joffrey is such a great, smarmy git, and although he is sort of like evil and does these horrible things, what you remember him as being is this smug, like arrogant little turd. Can't swear. So many swear words were trying to escape my mouth there. Like, you just do want to see go, but then for me, in that sort of moment where he does go, I don't know. There's some sympathy for him. I don't know why, because it is just an ugly.
Maybe it's not
horrible
sympathy.
way to go.
I think looking back, actually, I think it was just panic of like, oh, what happens now? Because obviously Cersei spins round, and well, it's the next episode after that. But you know, Tyrion is implicated in it all. Sansa has to leave, and there's this void at the right at the very top, which I don't think there's really. Well, there has been obviously with Robert, but it was a very different kind of void. And you just think, oh God, what happens now? And are any people that I really care about going to get offed, basically?
Yeah. And I think you're so scared about Tyrion, especially. Like, this is, for me, potentially his like season as a whole. I think he gets so much to do here. It was the last time his arc was like really very strong, and following him throughout his journey is just he's just so good. He like how many Emmys did Peter Dinklage win for this season? Was it any, James?
I don't know, mate.
I'm going to assume it's a lot because he was damn good.
This was we often talk about who's the biggest winners and losers, but certainly in terms of like an MVP performance, it's Tyrion this season because, like you say, we start and we have him putting up with Joffrey, then the death, then the subsequent fallout and that, and that his family turns on him even more to a certain extent for quite a few family members. But then obviously throughout that season, I don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves here, but there's just the development of him as a character, his interactions with so many different people, and then obviously his final acts in King's Landing, but I'm sure we'll get to that.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, so simultaneously, I suppose, Jon is on his way back to Castle Black after spending so much time outwards, James. I don't know why I'm talking like this. I'm just trying to chat you up during these podcasts. You know, Cleary isn't here, so I just get to do what I want and just go divergent. Obviously, I think this is also a season where Jon sort of comes into his own as well. He does, for me, in the first 3 seasons, it's finding out who this character is. And for me, this is where, again, he kind of becomes like the hero, the star of the show, and heading back and like the turmoil between sort of like his loyalties and how that develops. I think this season, especially at the beginning, sort of, I don't know, it sows those seeds of what would later come on with like the mutiny and everything that happens in there. And I really love sort of the conflict between like the wildlings and the lead up to it, like in this battle. What do you think about like sort of, I don't know, Jon Snow's arc in general?
Just in this season?
Yes.
I think it's really strong. I think kind of because he's spent so much time with the wildlings, and he's a like member of the Night's Watch, but he goes back to the Night's Watch, and he's this slight outsider because he's been with the wildlings, and he kind of sees the Night's Watch in a different light because he sees how they're treating the wildlings, and he knows different. And you kind of see like the sense of honor and how much he is Ned Stark's son, even though he's not Ned Stark's son. You see just how you see like how good a person he is and how much he'll fight to do what he thinks is right, which ultimately, like in season 5, will cost him his life. But that's just who he is.
Yeah.
I don't think it's too OTT to say arguably this is the first season where we see Jon seizes like become controller of his own destiny. Yes, obviously he left the wildlings and we had all that, but this is the one where he actively makes a decision of right now I've gone back to the Night's Watch, but no, I'm going to lead this army of people to go to Craster's Keep and fight back these mutineers. And then obviously we see all the stuff with him taking control in the battle, and then we see all the stuff with him going to volunteering to go and see Mance Rayder following the battle. I just think he's very proactive, let's say, in this season.
And he also finds his arch nemesis and the ultimate enemy of the show, in my opinion, Ollie.
Yes,
who is just the worst little lad potentially of all time. And you know, his eventual, fate. No sympathy for that, James.
No sympathy for that. I agree.
Yes.
Although, you can't say you don't agree. Because you and I were sharing memes of Ollie as various terrible people throughout history recently. We hate him so much. And you and I are watching the latest season pretty much simultaneously at the same time. And last night I watched him get hanged. And normally there's a lot of times where people die on screen and they put their dead face on the screen. And I'm not a huge fan of seeing someone who's dead and their face on screen, especially when they've had their head chopped off or been, hung or whatever. His little face popped up last night and I went, good, I'm glad you're dead. But yeah, here he kills Ygritte, of course. Yeah. And we see all that. And I get his motivations. His family's dead. I even said that last night. I said, I'm glad your parents are dead and I'm glad you're dead now.
Are you alone when this is going on, Wilbourn? No. You're just like, I'm glad you're dead.
Mrs. is like, all right, well, calm it down a little bit. But I hate Ollie.
I think, we all agree.
He's the worst.
His little nod Piss off, Ollie. That's his missus.
I was watching that again just before I came in, and it made me. It ignited a rage in me that I thought was long since extinguished, guys. Like it was genuinely.
Do you ever get annoyed? I mean, maybe you only get this watching it back a second or third time because it's all so sudden. But this is the fight where obviously Pip and Gren died.
Yeah.
And I just sat there and went, these two have died and you're still alive.
For you!
Because you're hiding.
Like now we're on it. Where does the battle and the fight in general sort of rank up there in Game of Thrones greats for you guys?
Good question, because I always had it a little bit lower down. So when I first watched it, the Wall storyline was one that I thought was maybe a tad weaker. I didn't find that on rewatch, actually. I thought it was really strong still. And the action that you see, I've got like that. The scythe comes down. You've got that insane 360 shot where it shows all the action. Like it's incredibly well filmed.
Yeah.
That side, I've literally written the words "that side" there because I forgot about it until when they unleashed it. Obviously, with all the wildlings climbing up the wall. There's a bit where I think one of the giants, I assume, it must be, who has like a bow and arrow, but obviously it's a giant bow and arrow, and it just lifts a guy off the wall. It's amazing.
There's a giant riding a mammoth. What is going on?
A giant I love the note here. A giant riding a mammoth. The side that 360 shot. I think that sums about it all.
It's just a bit as well when just before the battle, he turns to Jon and goes, "Yeah, probably should have sealed that. Probably should have sealed that little passageway." Oh, now you decide that, eh? A bit late for that, isn't it?
There's also like so many great character moments within it as well, like Pip, Gren, like their deaths, really strong, like little
Sam
character
with a bit
bits.
of banter during the battle.
Egret's death is just devastating. The way she dies in Jon's arms, that just gets me every time. We talked on the last one how much I love those two.
Well, that's what I love about Game of Thrones battle scenes in general is the way they it's not just a full-on spectacle. It's not just you're not just like wowed by the action itself. It's like those character moments in between, and that is like a ridiculously difficult / impressive thing to pull off if you get it right. And yet Game of Thrones has continued to not only get it right but increase sort of the standard and the scale of it with each subsequent battle.
I also find with all the battles, it's the sense of hope you get. So, like, Pip's a perfect example. So, Pip shoots someone with the crossbow, having missed and just being terrified, and him and Sam are just trying to stay alive, effectively. Shoots someone, and he goes, "I got someone." Sam goes, "Oh, is the battle over?"
Yeah, get him again.
Cracking banner. Gets back on arrow straight through the neck, dead. Just dies in Sam's arms. And you think,
yeah, great job, Sam.
Yeah.
Sam.
And then obviously, but then like when they go and unleash Ghost and he just tears through everyone, it's incredible.
Yeah,
and then also there's the dichotomy of it all. If you want the Night Watch to win, but you want our guy Tormund not to die as well.
Yeah. I mean, like, I don't know, and like obviously, like all of the North of the Wall stuff is like great in like this season, but what frustrates me about it in a little way is when like Jon Snow is like out there and stuff, like the near misses with Bran.
Yeah.
Like even like going back, it's still frustrating. I hate it when
so
shows
close.
do this. Like The Walking Dead, not just Diverge. It's not a Walking Dead podcast, but I used to do it all the time, and it annoys me there, and it annoys me here. Like it's like you wait so long for these characters to get back together. And I think it is eventually worth it, but going back now and knowing where like it ends up, it's. For me, it's frustrating.
Yeah, you think about like we talked on the last episode about when they're in the windmill. This one, they're literally what 20 yards away. They're behind a pile of snow watching Jon fight. Hodor's just snapped lock effectively. Who's I really enjoy the way he sort of sneaks in here, and we all know not to trust him, and obviously they're so willing to just go along with him, and they think, and Jon is tricked into thinking, that lot guy's all right, and then he finds obviously Bran and tries to escape with Bran to sort of save his own skin. But they're so close.
Yeah, man, it's so frustrating.
Also, but they've got different paths to go on, I suppose.
Talk about bastards. Carl Tanner.
Oh.
What is it? Carl Tanner is a right bastard is written down here.
And he is.
Oh, jeez. It's, I suppose, like, for me, when I think of season 4, like, it's, like we said at the beginning, there was so much, but what defines it for me is Arya's relationship with the Hound, which I know before we started filming, there were claims that the Hound might be the best swearer of all time. I think that's
definitely in Game of Thrones.
definitely in Game of Thrones.
He's
Not of all time.
He's up there with me.
Bronn is a good one as well,
Bronn's
but I
very
think
Bronn's
the
excellent.
Hound takes it.
Yeah.
He opens strongly when we first see him in Game of Thrones, and he just maintains it throughout the time. And when he's with Arya, you warm to him as much as she does.
Yeah.
I think because you just think, you just have had a bit of a rough time, haven't you? Really.
Yeah.
But that fight. I really forgot about that fight between Brienne and the Hound. Obviously, we have the whole journey with them. But that fight between them where Brienne's screaming and punching him. And again, it's one of those fights where you kind of don't want anyone to lose.
Yeah.
You kind of think, well, they're probably, in theory, fighting to the death here, but I don't want either of them to die. And then the fall as well, is you forget how dramatic that is with the Hound falling off the edge of the cliff.
It's really well done because it starts off and it's like a sword fight, and you're like, oh, this is good. Like, it's like knight kind of battle like we've seen before in Game of Thrones.
Yeah.
And then they drop the swords. It just becomes this like raw, visceral, like horrible thing, and you hear every blow.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh.
It reminded me I was doing a list of yours recently about intense moments, and I'd never seen it before. There's a fight in Deadwood where they're sort of rolling around in the mud and just hitting themselves using whatever sneaky tactics they would.
That's it.
And that's it. Yeah. It's the most visceral fight. It is, it's all well and good having the nice sword fights, and yes, you're still fighting to the death, but you will do anything to try and survive. It's the desperation half the time.
I think it's so impressive that, like you said, that comes in a fight where you don't really want anyone to lose. Like they've saved the most visceral, the most sort of ugly, the rawest fight for someone where you don't want either of these characters to die, and obviously one kind of has to at the end. But it's just the way that I remember watching that, and I was kind of speechless at the time, and even going back to it now, again watching it for this, like you said, every single blow hurts. It hurts you. You can feel it. And it's horrible. But then obviously the Hound has to lose, and I mean, in the moment, that is kind of heartbreaking. In hindsight, is it robbed slightly of some of its power, knowing that he's about to head back later on?
I don't think so. I think it's a nice surprise when he does appear, but I don't think you lose any of the... Certainly rewatching it, didn't lose any of the gravitas that I first felt watching it. And especially because of the fact he's developed this relationship with Arya, but we always known that Arya's been laid around the fire with him, reciting her list that he's on to him. And there's the bit where she tries to kill him when... This season, isn't it? When she's doing the water dancing, she goes to stab him and he just stops on his... and he just punches her in the face. But it's also the fact that he's dying, or he appears to be dying, like you say, but he wants to just be put out of his misery. So instead he says, just kill me. And she says, no.
Yeah.
So then he tries to bait her by saying, your family, and then, this boy that you cared for, he squealed and it doesn't work. And it's incredible. It's one of the most, what we perceived at the time was a death. One of the most dramatic deaths without an ending of life, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Of her, she takes control by not chopping his head off or stabbing him through the heart, but just leaving him, which is the worst of every scenario.
Yeah, the lack of that closure is it gets at the heartstrings. No one comes out of that fight well.
Pod's all right.
Pod does okay, actually, doesn't he?
You know what? Now you mentioned it, Pod's
Actually, no, because he gets a bollocking from Brienne because he's watched the fight, which has allowed Arya to leave for Bravo.
Right.
Yeah, of course.
No one comes out well.
Yeah, obviously that's the end of Arya's, and the Hound's great little bit of a like a bit of a banter holiday,
a little banter road trip, innit?
A little bit. I could have honestly watched about 5 seasons of that.
Yeah,
if there was a spin-off show detailing every single minute of what happened there.
Every chick in the air.
I could have watched that more than I watched Arya clean dead bodies like we do in the next season.
I think this is Arya's best season for me.
Yeah.
I think it's a lot of characters' best season because I think you get a lot of payoff to it, and although it is quite, in my opinion, a transitionary period, what a lot of the characters transition to later on is less good than what they're doing here, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
It's interesting what you say about the lack of closure in the Hound's death, because although this doesn't happen until much later on, the ending of sort of Stannis is sort of the inverse of that for me. You know what I mean? Where you're just kind of I would like some closure there. But Stannis' arc in this season, this was when I was coming around to him. He is kind of the worst still, but
he is the worst.
Because I used to have a teacher, just going off on a tangent here, who used to always root for Stannis, and I never understood why, and still now do not understand why he was
You're
his
so young.
favorite.
Yeah.
Is it what?
You're so young.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, because I was in school.
I was like, what, have you been catching up? No, you were watching it at school God, we're old.
Well, I think it was like a sixth form teacher.
Yeah.
It wasn't too long ago.
Still though.
All right,
Still
guys.
though.
Jeez.
Because obviously he goes to the Iron Bank, doesn't he, to get more money for it. And it's I quite like that scene on reflection. I think first time you're watching, you're like, get back to the fighting. But the negotiations, which was more, becomes more and more a key part of the entire whole Game of Thrones thing is very interesting. The fact that he goes there and they just go, no, we're not going to give you the money. And then they're won over, of course. And then, he seems to be back by the end of this season. He seems to be back to full strength when he tears through. And there's not really a lot of fighting. He just sort of goes through the wildlings camp and forces them to surrender. But he just seems, there's that shot, isn't it? It was the woods and they just like a pincer movement around it. And you think he's a force to be reckoned with. He really comes back from being near the edge in previous seasons to suddenly being yet again someone you think, I should probably take this character seriously.
Where do you fall on Stannis, James?
I don't know.
Right.
I kind of go back and forth on them. I really like Stephen Dillon's performance.
Yes.
The character, I think, maybe buys a bit too much into his own hype kind of thing in the show. It becomes too much of a religious zealot almost. Because he's like, yeah, I'm all in on this Lord of Light stuff.
Yeah.
I don't really like that. But and obviously ends up with burning his daughter.
Yeah.
Which,
too far that.
I'd
Step
say
too
so.
far.
Yeah, probably. Too far, Tony.
Can I put forward an argument for the best single season character in Game of Thrones in Oberyn Martell?
Yes.
Yes.
And I agree.
I don't think there's not many, just off the top of my head, there's not many characters you can think of who certainly not like weren't brought in from the beginning and then just lasted a season or whatever, like Ned, for example. Oberyn comes in, steals almost every scene he's in, and then has the most spectacular, he is the personification of like a firework. He comes in, grabs everyone's attention, just bang, and that's it. There you go. He's smashed on the floor by the mountain.
That's maybe it. I mean, like that should have clued us in at first. Like, this is too good to be true. This is going too well. I like him too much. He can't last. He's not allowed to last.
He's just like, he's so cool. He comes in, he's like really nice to everyone. He's like nice to Tyrion. He's like, he's a good lad. He's a top shagger. He's just getting in the brothel with everyone. He's just like, he's got all this mint patter. He's like, fighting's really good. He does everything so well.
Fighting is really good.
He's too good. He's too good to
when
live.
Jaime and Bronn say, I'm not fighting the bloody mountain, and he goes, I'll fight him for you.
Yeah.
Like,
I love that scene as well. He's like, I will be your champion. And he's like, yes, come on.
James and I'm fairly certain watched the what's it called, the Mountain and the versus the Viper or whatever the episode's called. We watched that around the same time.
Watch it together.
We pretty much do. We came into work the next day, and there's so many times you could say this throughout Game of Thrones, but that fight, arguably more than almost anything. I remember we talked about with Rob umming and ahhing about going and fighting here or going to get the phrase for Casterly Rock, and you go, don't do it. That fight more than anything, I watched it and went, "You've won! Just don't stand next." Like, you almost think there's still a chance that he's going to get away with it, and he just gets swept off his feet, eyes crushed, and
it goes on for so long. He walks around the body so many times,
and he
there's so many
repeats
chances.
his,
Like, just kill it, just finish it, just walk away, anything, and then no.
When I first watched it, I thought that sense of inevitability was sort of like a detriment to it, because as soon as he does start walking around, like you say, you're like, oh well, he's dead now, and I was like, oh well, I know what's coming, but like going back, no, it's like perfect in the way it builds tension, like the dread that it builds and the sense of inevitability, I think works in its favor because when that skull crush comes, it comes.
Was I the only one as well who was obviously gutted? He died. He's a great character.
Don't sound it. You're
but
laughing, Will.
No, but I was trying to see the bigger picture and going, all right, well, we'll call it a draw. So Tyrion does not have to die, because obviously it concludes and Tywin goes, right, Tyrion, you're sentenced to death. And obviously the acting, again, we're talking about it here with Tyrion, is just so on point. It's not him sad or happy. He's just devastated because he's had the hope of, oh, cool, he's killed the mountain. I get to go free. Oh, no, he's dead and now I've been sentenced to death. But yeah, was I the only one who just thought, right, well, we have to replay that because both of them dead. Granted, Qyburn or whatever his name is does his stuff with the mountain, but he's dead as well, effectively, at that point. He's been poisoned and stabbed.
Right.
I'd have taken a draw. Like
I think a draw's fair. I
think like Tyrion's entire sort of trial by combat leading up to like sort of his like inevitable escape is I don't know, the backbone of the season maybe for me. I think everything with him is so good. Like you said, the sense of desperation, just deflation after that fight ends. It's just, for me, that was, even though no one is really safe in Game of Thrones, you kind of assumed at that point Tyrion was, because they were doing. At least I did. There was they were doing so much with him. It seemed like he had so much potential. He was a fan favorite, and I remember the wave of uncertainty that just washed over me when that moment came, and I thought, whoa, I have no idea where this is going. I have no idea what's going on. And I think it threads into the remainder of the season just so well.
Forgot what we've completely skipped past I was his whore, which is such a huge scene and quotable scene, according to me. Just me talking about, yes, I was his whore. Shay's little appearance. That's my Shay impression. Yeah.
What's that? Talking about it, I don't think I can.
But yeah, you see everyone try and salvage this point. You see,
point.
people will stand up and testify against Tyrion, and we see all the usual characters pop up, and then when she appears, it's just. You feel as bad as Tyrion,
it's
don't you?
because
she's left. She's left. What end of last season, beginning of this season? She's sent off. It must have been end of last season. She's sent off on a ship, and. No, it wasn't. It was this season because, of course, she's pointed out by Cersei at the wedding. But yeah, you almost think, well, that's the end of that character. I'll never see her again. And then it's such a surprise when she shows up and says what she says. Obviously,
and then you get Tyrion's speech, which for me I think is the best acted moment in the entire show.
I did not kill him, but I wish that I had the old.
I wish I had enough poison for the lot of you. Like that speech is just the ferocity, the anger, the fact that his entire life has kind of really been building to that moment and that outpouring.
And you forget, prior to Shay and that speech, I completely forgot about this until I rewatched it. Jamie's been in to see him and said, look, plead guilty or whatever, and we'll
go to the wall.
You'll go to the wall, but blah, 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 Father will look after us, sort of thing. And that's the straw that broke the camel's back, almost.
I love Jamie and Tyrion's relationship throughout the entire show is obviously really great, but I love the way it sort of develops over this season. You can sort of see, I don't know, Jamie's just like in that scene, he's kind of just pleading with him. There is just there's that bond there for me. I don't know, it's that family is such a terror throughout, and it's I like to cling on to any little bit of hope or sort of not sentimentality. That's far too kind for what it is. But I don't know. I like what they do with those characters in those scenes. At the same time, though, the crossbow moment that comes right at the very end is another in a series of turning points in the season 4. That was another moment where I was like, okay, everything's changed. Yeah, everything's changed. There's no coming back for this. It's the point for me. That episode, for some reason, it's when you see Varys on the boat, just going. For me, I was just thinking, this is the point of no return. This is everything has escalated to a boiling point. In this world will never ever be the same again.
Yeah, I totally agree. Especially because it's Tywin, and you can have Robb Stark die. You can have Joffrey die. You can have Tommen. It doesn't really matter.
He's
that
the
much
puppet master,
because Tywin is there at the top of the food chain, controlling everything, and now he's gone, and it's and
he dies in such a not a lame way, but a pathetic way, effectively being shot on the loo.
Yeah,
you'd think, oh well, he's going to die in battle. That's what's going to happen. That's going to be the passing of the torch to whoever takes over control. No, just gets shot on the loo by his most hated creation because he says the wrong words. He said, "Do not say that word," and he shoots him with the crossbow as a result. But. Screw that guy.
I do miss Charles Dance. Charles Dance was so bloody good.
He was a legend.
Every single thing he does. What else happens this season? What have I missed here?
Look at your notes,
mate. I know I'm trying to look down. I know
one of the toughest things. I think maybe why I hesitated when we say it's the best season. I think it is. It's just not necessarily the most enjoyable season. When Yara tries to save Theon, she goes in. Finds her in the kennels, and It's even worse on the second viewing for me, that where she tries to get him out and he just hides and gets
no, I'm weak. And
all the men die for literally no reason, effectively. And, it was such a hard watch. And then obviously he helps Ramsay. Ramsay says you have to play the character of Theon Greyjoy to get them Moat Cailin. And all that moment where he convinces these soldiers who are clearly in a bad way but trust him because he's Theon Greyjoy that he'll say, look, just surrender, don't worry, it'll be fine. Literally, the guy's face, I think, is on screen, cuts, and he's been flayed by Ramsay.
Yeah. I think for me, Theon's story in this season is one of the things that holds up upon a rewatch and looking at it in the context of the entire season, because I remember watching that at the time and thinking that sort of escape attempt, that rescue attempt, was just kind of deflating and anticlimactic. But looking at it now, it's sort of, I like what they do with Reek and sort of how broken he is, because that just sums it up. It's like, man, will this character ever be able to come back? And obviously he does eventually, but like in that moment, you're convinced, this is someone else entirely.
We should talk a little bit about Dani as well, because she has quite the journey.
Yeah, she's important.
yeah. Somehow forgot all about her, guys. I'm not doing
it.
Right at the very top. Maybe that's why.
I mean, like, she captures Marine, but then, you know, the people. This is the start of things not going arguably. Not in the first season, it went well for her, but you know, not going to plan. The plan was, we go here, we free these people, and then we go to King's Landing. And then suddenly it starts to catch up on her that she can't just go to a city, free all the slaves, move on, and not expect the slavers or someone else to try and seize that power that there's going to be in a vacuum.
Yeah, and it's all about, like, she's got to learn to become a leader, because she's just been a freer of slaves, which is great. You know, she's doing a good thing. Yeah. But she just has to learn how to lead, and that comes in Marine, which gets maybe a little frustrating at times later down the line when she kind of disappears and you're left with Tyrion and all that stuff going on. But I think it's really good in this season.
I really like the battle she has where they volunteer to represent her, but she says, "Oh no, I need you, Ser Jorah, you're my advisor." And she goes, "Do you want a horse?" And he's like, "No, I'm good. I've just got this knife. I'll be absolutely fine." And just kills him straight away.
Yeah.
It's fantastic.
I like the drama with the dragons in this season, because this is when they start to become little horrible little bloodthirsty teenagers.
I saw a video describing them as going through dragon puberty, which really made me laugh. I'd not thought about that before. Yeah, it's a great summary of it all, because they're suddenly like, "God, leave me alone, Mom. God."
Obviously, Dario's recast as well.
Yes.
Just like I have been
recast.
Adam
Cleary's been recast.
What a downgrade that is, man.
We've lost the exotic sexual Adam Cleary for the more typically handsome Josh Brown.
I wonder where you're going with that.
I don't know.
But the dragons, I really like that, because it did seem relatively sort of, we just got dragons, we can control them, and then they solve all the problems initially, which is great initially. You're not complaining about that, but you don't want it to be that simplistic going forward. And the fact that they, you can't control them. If there's sheep just rambling about, they're obviously going to go and kill them, and that's almost the catalyst for all things going wrong.
Is this the last great Dani season for a little while, or am I just talking out my bum when I say that? Because for me, after this season, things kind of become a little bit formulaic, a little bit repetitive. I don't know. For me,
she doesn't seem as strong, does she, after this season in terms of an individual character? She does eventually, but there's a period after this where she's not making all the decisions straight away. Whereas in this season, and certainly in previous seasons, it's her directing, drafting, and everyone just sort of going along with her.
I think season 6 is really strong. Yeah. What comes in Marine afterwards I don't think it quite works. Also for the Sons of the Harpy and all that, I don't think that quite lands. Yeah. Probably because I don't have time to pack it in. I mean, George R. R. Martin struggled with a lot of Marine stuff as well. It does falter a bit. But in this season, especially with the dragon stuff, and just when she's chaining them up, and you really feel for the dragons, you feel for her. It's a really good moment. Yeah,
it's I love the way it all plays into, like you said, that her proper growth into a leader, like having to struggle with a lot of the things she hasn't had to struggle before, and sort of just make some genuinely difficult decisions, and not just have it be as cut and dry is what she's used to.
Completely forgot until rewatching about Jojen's death in this season. Obviously, when they're getting to the three-eyed raven and stuff like that, terrifying scene on a rewatch as well, with the guy, the dead people, skeletons just climbing out of the ground. And his death is a really tough one to watch as well, because it's not like he dies in battle. Just an arm appears with a knife and just shivs him a few times. It's a tough.
It's the worst way to go about
it. No one wants that.
Better or worse than going on the toilet.
Yeah, we should. Because sometimes we sit here and do biggest winners and losers, and I think it's an obvious thing to say, but people like Tywin and, arguably Jojen are the biggest losers here, because they die, but they die in such a terrible way.
Yeah. That's it. I think this is the season of terrible, terrible deaths. No one dies gracefully in this season.
Lysa through the moon door.
Yeah.
Great moment.
Spectacular death. And arguably, related to that, one of the biggest winners of this season is Littlefinger. He conspires with Lady Olenna to kill Joffrey, of course. And then he just manipulates everything around him. He gets Sandra away. He kills the jester that has got Sandra away from everything. So then he's the only one who knows all about it. He talks about that necklace that obviously has been involved in it. And then he's there just pulling strings and immediately marries Aunt Liza when they get there. Yeah. Then just shoves her through the moon door, kisses Sansa, and he's effectively Lord of the Vale, pretty much.
He's having a great time, isn't he?
He is. We're not. I hate watching
him
kiss
the worst.
Sansa,
It's horrible, isn't it?
It is rank. It's not good. I think that's just about everything. So biggest winners?
I'd say
Littlefinger,
because I think Tyrion wins in terms of, but he's in a deep hole. He comes back to 0 rather than really elevating his position anymore, and obviously has to leave his home.
Yeah. Oh yeah. On the other hand, sure, he has to leave at home too. But I think that comes with a sense of real freedom and excitement that doesn't really get delivered on. But when she's sailing on that Bravos, I'm like, that's awesome.
Yeah.
That's all she's been through. So I think she has a big win.
Dragons lose.
Dragons
shoved in a
lose.
vault at the end.
Yeah. Poor guys. It's not really fair. Anyway, I want to know what you guys think down in the comments below. Is season 4 the best one? I think that's what I've sort of come to the conclusion on. But I want to know what you guys think down in the comments. As always, well, not as always. Let me sign up for this. As always, I've been Josh, but one time I've been Josh and not
As
Adam
always,
Cleary.
I've been Adam Cleary, recast as Josh Brown.
But as always, you've been watching the Got Culture podcast with James Hunt and, of course, Adam Wilbourn. We'll be back next week with season 5.
Yeah. I don't know if you will be.
I might not be back. Adam Cleveland will be back doing a better job than me. But we'll see you soon. Please tune in then. Please support Got Culture. Give us a like, share, subscribe, and we'll see you soon. Goodbye.
Bye.
Bye.